369.
Damn, bitch.
Damn, you're fine.
Suck it to me one more time.
To the windows, to the walls.
Till the sweat drop down my balls.
All these bitches crawl.
Warning, this podcast contains violence, sexuality, gore, and other horrible and disturbing things. Listener discretion is advised. Also, the hosts of this venture are ignorant dipshits, so please do not take anything they say as fact. And enjoy the show.
Now, are you sitting comfortably? Good. Then we'll begin.
Today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be.
The atoms in your left hand probably came from a different star than your right hand.
It is our basic human right to be fucked up.
A second plane now has crashed into the other tower of the World Trade Center.
Put chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
The defendant shall be incarcerated for the rest of her natural life with no possibility of parole.
You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men.
We were somewhere around Barstow, on the edge of the desert, when the drugs began to take hold.
Occultae Veritatis.
Welcome to Occultae Veritatis. I am Ood Gallifrey.
Sage Murray.
And Richard Bigley.
We've got guests too.
And in studio with us,
Arthur.
And
Ice D.
Welcome.
D, it's him.
Yep. It's me.
Yeah. He has the golden voice that provides the disclaimer at the start of our podcast, and his lovely partner sings Occultae Veritatis at the start of each show. So,
And he also has a podcast of his own if you want to tune in to.
Yeah, that's right. It is www.talkingbooks.tk, and we talk about books and writing and stuff.
It's really good.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of starts off a little bit rocky at the beginning, but, once you get to, like, episode 4 or 5, we start getting a little groove going on.
Right.
If you guys have listened to our first episodes,
it's always, you're trying things out,
You mean
for
well.
any of you kids out there who want to start your own podcast, best thing to do for your first episode is interview yourself.
Sure.
Why not?
Or an episode about the different types of serial killers. That's also pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. All right. So I guess we have an Ood episode today.
yeah, we're going to dive into the deep world, the shallow world of black-eyed kids. I'm going to try not to say black kids. I'm going to say black-eyed kids, because that's not going to come across very well. But we need some poison to drink while we do that, so let's get some.
So, what's your poison?
Shot a crunk, so fresh, so clean, and I pop that bitch
Instantly in the mind. This bitch is fine. I came to the club out in the lead times. Can I play with your panty line?
Club owner saying better calm down. Security guard gone and threaten me now. Cracker drunker than a motherfucker threaten me now. I said.
Come on.
So when is the album going to drop?
Fuck, we should just do that. Eh?
Yeah, probably should, just for giggles, drop an EP.
Yeah. No, it'll be like the Richard Bigley Sage Murray LP, man. That's what's going down.
Yeah.
It'll be an LP.
We'll just croon
Just
vulgar.
the official, and we can release it on vinyl too.
No, singing nasty songs in a beautiful tone.
Yeah.
Okay.
We mean
you
one.
guys were rapping. I was going to say, the EP should be named, White People Nonsense.
It still is white people
nonsense. Yeah, I think it can still be white people nonsense.
I'm looking at a clear bottle that the material, the liquid inside of it, is clearly fermented into the bottle itself because the bottle is all pushed out due to the expansion of the gas.
It might oh no, it's not going to go. So kvass is a Slavic drink. It's fermented, but it's not particularly alcoholic. It should only be 1-2% maybe.
It's delicious.
It's a lot like a pop. In fact, they drink it like little kids in Slavic countries, Russia, Ukraine.
Yeah.
They drink it like pop.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be given in schools, which is funny because you're giving kids alcohol in schools in Russia, because obviously. But it is
Whoa, that's
yeah,
carbon.
That's heady. It's a little heady.
Yeah.
No, I think I'll do it myself.
Yeah.
I've seen how you pour.
It is actually fermented bread juice.
Yes.
Because they take blockbrot, which is just a black bread with caraway seeds, and they
You can
take
add
the
raisins
leftovers.
and stuff to it.
Yeah, and they take leftovers, add a whole bunch of water, some yeast and whatnot, and it turns into this disgustingly delicious kvass.
Interesting. So beer is described as like liquid bread, but this really is like liquid bread.
This is really liquid bread.
It's so good. I'm so excited.
Smells like a heavy dark bread.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I drank it for the first time. I don't know if we want to drop the name of where I buy this in town or not.
Sure, why not?
So it's a little Ukrainian store on 8th Street called Slavianka. It is the best one.
Well,
as far as I'm
there's
concerned.
Smock, too.
I went into Smock to try to buy kvass, and my Ukrainian isn't particularly good, or at all, but I said, I'm trying to find the kvass, and they went, what? And the...
Я не знаю.
Yeah, but the guy at Slavianka, you say, kvass, he goes, oh, why are you drinking kvass? It's so good, ha ha ha. So, and always ask you when you're coming back.
I love it so much.
I don't know. As soon as I become a regular somewhere, I have an urge to stop going there.
Oh, you don't have to be a regular. You show up for the first time. It's like, when are you coming back?
Oh, sweet.
Yeah,
So good.
It's like a sweet bread sort of liquid thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you said this was the non-alcoholic stuff, eh?
Well, the way it's fermented, it has some alcohol content to it. But
I would give it to my kid.
Yeah, it's like
nothing.
1% max.
Yeah.
They say if you drink a whole 2 liter of it, you probably are still fine. If you drink 2 liters of it, you'll probably get a 0.4.
Yeah, it has double the alcohol of non-alcoholic beer.
Yeah, pretty much it.
Yeah.
Huh.
I'm like all nostalgic right now.
I'm so glad.
Oh,
Yeah, he's good. Tastes like Stanley Cup.
it's good.
It kind of grows on you. Like I wasn't quite sure what I'm getting into on this, but I'm okay with that now. Like, as you start drinking it, you just you get used to it. Your body's like, oh yeah, this is I'm not dying yet.
It's kind of a sour, malty thing, but it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give it to the kids for Christmas or something.
I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. Like it's I don't know. I have the same opinion as Richard. It's growing on me with every sip.
I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. I love kvass so much.
I'm going to give it I don't know, I'd say probably about a 5 out of 10. I mean, it's not bad. And, if it was all I had, I'm sure I'd drink it. But it's incredibly sweet and kind of has a bit of a tartness aftertaste to it. And, yeah.
If it was a wine, you'd say it's dry. But whatever.
Rude.
He's get 3 Lada over 1 Vareniki.
Vareniki.
Yeah, that's more than 1, isn't it?
3 Lada.
Vareniki.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know what black-eyed kids are. I don't think they're human. It's hard to describe what you feel when you meet one of them.
I had never heard of BEKs until one of them showed up at my door.
And I thought that was weird, so I told dispatch, and I went to get out of the car, and just as I was starting to, I saw her eyes.
So we're going to talk about black-eyed kids today. So
Nice.
Black-eyed kids is kind of a internet phenomenon. It's like not like a cultural phenomenon. It's not something that's been passed down generation to generation. It's something that seemed to erupt from the internet around the year 1996.
Was there internet in 1996?
Yes, but it went...
Oh, yeah. Cling, clang, clang.
It was before Facebook. It was before Twitter. It was before any of those. Basically, the internet was a lot of message boards. Very simple forums and message boards.
And IRC.
Yes.
And
I remember IRC.
And Usenet and...
Yeah, very, very primitive stuff. But from there, a journalist named Brian Bethels came forward and he said that he had an encounter with something he called black-eyed kids. Now, journalists are trained to be observant, they're detail-oriented, and they have a reputation to protect. Now, that doesn't say that just because he's a journalist, he's telling the truth. That doesn't say that just because he's a journalist, he noticed things that others would not. That's just what some aspects journalists tend to share. Who knows if this guy is being truthful or not, because he's gained quite a notoriety around inventing this stuff. The story goes that after 10 p.m. on Sunday, just after sunset, he was paying a bill. This is back when you had to write checks to places and put in deposits. Like if you wanted to pay your internet bill, you'd have to write a check, drive to the internet house, and drop it into... and drop it into like a mail slot in order to pay your bill.
Oh boy.
There was no postal service, apparently.
No.
Apparently you had to drive down there yourself to give them the check in person.
In your horse and buggy.
In 1996, there was no postal service, apparently.
Where the little lady was plugging the
or
jacks
credit
in
cards, or you'd be able to phone them and pay by credit card over the phone. Apparently they didn't have any of that in 96. Well, it's probably because they need that big, like, kerchunk machine to imprint your card, which meant no matter how you paid, you had to go down in person, I guess.
Yeah, so
poor Ood.
So basically, he was paying a bill. And he drove underneath a movie marquee because it was light out, and he could write the check on that light, where the light of the marquee could help him write a check. Yeah. So he heard a knock, and he turned to his right, and he realized there was two little boys standing at his driver's side window. Oh yes, ASMR. One of them was about 9-ish years old. He was pale with freckles, and he had a red hair. The
ginger.
other one was ginger. The other one was 11-ish years old. He had an olive complexion, curly hair, and he was later to be called the spokesman. Now, the younger one stayed in the background and didn't do much. This older one that he named the spokesman started talking to him. He continued to knock, and he rolled down his window a little crack and asked what they wanted. Now, when a kid approaches a stranger, usually how do kids talk? Like you have a children, so
I do have a children.
Gee golly, mister.
Yeah, if your son was to go up to someone and ask for help, a total stranger, how would he talk?
If it was her son, he would just giggle and giggle and giggle, and you'd never get a damn word out of him.
Yeah, maybe. But he would also, I think if it was if he needed to ask help from like a stranger, he would probably be pretty like quiet and shy when approaching.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Now these children were different. Yeah, so children are usually shy or halted, or they kind of giggle out of embarrassment, or they just have nervous giggles or stuff like that. But when this kid talked, he talked confidently, boldly, in complete sentences. And he seemed to speak from a place that not many, 11-year-olds could, which is kind of strange. Mm-hmm. And he said, we left our money at our mom's house. Give us a drive so we can get it.
Whoa.
Brian, Brian was unnerved. As soon as the kid spoke, he had a massive fear response. Now, he started talking back to them and having a conversation with them, and he said that the fear response started growing and growing and growing. And even in that moment, he was trying to rectify, the thoughts in his head with what was happening, and he was saying, why am I so fucking terrified of these two little kids? They're not imposing, they're not being really threatening, they're just kind of, asking for help, so why do I feel so damn afraid?
You're right, that would be a good band name.
Yeah.
You should
have
probably
a children.
read it out for anybody who's not watching the Discord.
It says, you have a children would be a good name for a band.
By the way, if you're not a Patreon, you should become one, because then you get to listen to us live. And consider joining our Patreon if you're still listening to us after however many, I don't know, this is probably episode 98 or something.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So he started thinking through, and he started saying, why do you have to go with me? Why do you have to need a ride? And he started realizing that the last movies have already been half over, so they couldn't even get in to get the movie, so their story was falling apart. So he started saying I don't know about this. And the kids the spokesman started talking more strongly, more forcefully, saying, look, mister, this won't take long. Our house is close by. Just let us in.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. We're just a couple of kids. What could we do? We don't even have a gun. Talking like that.
Because that's the kind of thing somebody who doesn't have a gun would say.
Yeah.
one thing he noticed is his hand was on the steering wheel before, and when he looked down again, his hand was resting on the unlock button of the car. So he took his hand away, almost like subconsciously he was about to unlock his car door.
Mm-hmm.
He forced himself to look away from these kids, and that's when he noticed times on the marquee were different. And these movies were more than half over, and even if they went home and got their money and came back, the movies would be totally over, so their excuse didn't work anymore. He said that the act of looking away terrified him more than anything else. He described it as prey facing away from her predator. Like, that's how he felt. So he rolls up his window all the way up because he was about done with it, and the spokesman starts slamming on the glass and basically yelling and begging to be let in.
Ooh.
The second kid, the redhead in the background, he was just kind of being like doe-eyed and cute in the background, but now he has a face of panic, as if saying like, this isn't how it was supposed to go. The spokesman just then screams, "We can't get in your car unless you let us in." He then slammed the car into a reverse. He did panic driving out of that parking lot, and he said that about a second after he pulled backwards, he looked ahead again and the two kids were gone.
So old-timey vampire rules here.
Yep. Yeah, and he ran, he drove all the way home, he ran from his car to his apartment, he didn't even lock the front door of his apartment, and he just hid in his bedroom for the rest of the night. Like, that's how terrified he was.
Jeez.
And he said he had this irrational fear that the kids were going to chase him and grab onto his car, and if they got a hold of the car, that he would die. He said that was his irrational belief.
Mm-hmm.
This is the original post by Brian Bethel on Creepypasta, titled The Black-Eyed Kids. My internet service provider used to have offices in shopping centers before they moved their comparatively lush accommodations elsewhere. There was a drop box at that original location. The monthly bill was due, and thus, there but for the grace of the net I went. It was about 9:30 p.m. when I left. From my relatively isolated apartment, it's about a 10 or 15 minute or so to downtown Albany. Right next to the Camelot Communications old location is a $1.50 movie theater. That masterwork of modern film, Mortal Kombat. I drove by the theater on my way to the center proper and pulled into an empty parking space. Using the glow of the marquee to write out my check, I was startled to hear a knock on the driver's side window of my car. I looked over and saw two children staring at me from the street. I need to describe them. With the one feature, you can guess what it was, that I didn't realize about halfway through the conversation, cleverly omitted. Both appeared to be in a semi-mystical stage of life children get into where you can't exactly tell their age. Both were boys, and my initial impression is that they were between 10 and 14. Boy number 1 was the spokesman. Boy number 2 didn't speak during the entire conversation, at least not in words. Boy number 1 was slightly taller than his companion, wearing a pullover hooded shirt with a sort of grey checkered pattern and jeans. I couldn't see his shoes. His skin was olive-colored and had curly, medium-length brown hair. He exuded an air of quiet confidence. Boy number 2 had pale skin with a trace of freckles. His primary characteristic seemed to be looking around nervously. He was dressed in a similar pattern to his companion, but his pullover was a light green color. His hair was a sort of pale orange. They didn't appear to be related, at least directly. Okay, great, I thought. They're going to hit me up for money, and then the air changed. I've explained this before, but for the benefit of any new lurkers out there, right before I experience something strange, there's a change in perception that comes about which I describe in the above matter. It's basically enough to know that it's too late. So there I was, filling out and checking my car, which was still running, and in a sudden panic over the appearance of the two boys, I was confused, but an overwhelming sense of fear and unearthliness rushed in nonetheless. The spokesman smiled, and for some inexplicable reason, my chilled blood ran. I could feel a fight or flight response kicking in, something I knew instinctually was not right, but I didn't know what it could possibly be. I rolled down the window very, very slightly and asked, "Yes." The spokesman smiled again, broader this time. His teeth were very, very white. "Hey, mister, what's up? We have a problem." His voice was that of a young man, but his diction, quiet, calm, and something I couldn't put my finger on, made my desire to flee even greater. "You see, my friend, and I want to see the films, but we forgot our money. We need to go to our house to get it. Want to help us out, mister?" Okay. Journalists are required to talk to lots of people, including children. I've seen and spoken to lots of them, and here's how it usually goes. Mister, can I see that camera? I won't break it or anything, I promise. My dad has a camera, and he lets me hold it sometimes, I guess. And I took a picture of my dog, and it wasn't very good because I got my finger in the way, but it'd be great if you let me hold your camera. And in some shuffling or body swaying way, you got typical kid talking to a stranger. In short, kids are usually apologetic and nervous and shy. People generally teach children when they talk to adults they're usually bothering them for one reason or another, and they should at least be polite. This kid in no way was fitting the mold. His command of language was incredible, and he showed no signs of fear. He spoke as if my help was a foregone conclusion. When he grinned, it was as if he was trying to say, "I know something. I'm not going to say it, and you're not going to like it. But the only way you're going to find out is doing what I say." Well, was the best reply I could offer. Now here's where things start to get strange. The quiet companion looked at the spokesperson with a mixture of confusion and guilt on his face. He seemed in some ways shocked, not with his friend's brusque manner, but that I didn't just immediately open the door. He eyed me nervously. The spokesman seemed a bit perturbed too. I was still registering something wrong with both of them. "Come on, mister," the spokesman said again, smooth as silk. "Car salesmen could learn something from this kid. Now, we just want to go to our house. We're just two little boys, after all." This really scared me. Something in the diction and tone set off my alarm bells. My mind was frantically trying to process what I was perceiving about the two figures that were wrong. Was all I could manage. I felt myself digging my fingernails into the steering wheel. "What movie were you going to see?" I asked finally. "Mortal Kombat, of course," the spokesman said. The silent one nodded in affirmation. "Oh," I said. I stole a quick glance, and at the marquee and the clock in my car. Mortal Kombat had been playing for an hour, the last showing of the evening. The silent one looked increasingly nervous. I think he saw my glances, and suspected that I might be detecting something was not above board. "Come on, mister. Just let us in. We can't get into your car until you do, you know," the spokesman said soothingly. "Just let us in, and we'll be gone before you know it. We'll just go to our mother's house." We locked eyes. To my horror, I realized my hand had strayed towards the door lock, and was in the process of opening it. I pulled it away, probably a bit too violently, but it did force me to look away from the children. I turned back. I offered weakly, and my mind snapped back into sharp focus. For the first time, I noticed their eyes. They were coal black, no pupil, no iris. Just two staring orbs reflecting the red and white light of the marquee. At that point, I know my expression betrayed me. The silent one had a look of horror on his face, in a combination that seemed to indicate A, the impossible had just happened, and B, we'd been found out. The spokesman, on the other hand, wore a mask of anger. "Come on, mister," he said. "We won't hurt you. You will have to let us in. We don't have a gun." That last statement scared the living hell out of me, because at that point, by his tone, he was plainly saying, "We don't need a gun." He noticed my hand shooting towards the gear shift. The spokesman's final words contained an anger that was complete and whole, and yet contained respects in a tone of panic. "We can't come in unless you tell us it's okay. Let us in." I ripped the car into a reverse and tore out of the parking lot. I noticed the boys in my peripheral vision and stole a quick glance back. They were gone. The sidewalk by the theater was deserted. I drove home in a heightened state of panic. Had anyone attempted to stop me, I would have run on through and faced the consequences later. I bolted into my house, scanning all around, including the sky. What did I see? Maybe nothing more than some kid looking for a ride. And some really funky contacts. Yeah, right. And that's the end. Brian then went into one of these IRC chat rooms, and he encountered somebody who had a very similar story to him. This was before he released it. Suddenly there was somebody telling a similar story in a chat room with him. This happened in 1998 to John Northwood. In downtown Portland, Oregon, after a day-long seminar on software development, John went to get a bite to eat and then went back to his car at 11 p.m. He got a knock on his window, and it was a guy from the conference that he went with. His name was Doug. Doug said he wanted to ride around for a bit, wanted to ride around the block for like a 5-minute ride because there's some creepy kids standing around his car, and he didn't want to confront them. He let Doug in his car, and he drove to his friend's car. And there's 3 kids. They appear to be in goth-like clothing, but they appear intense in posing, like they aren't phased when a car's headlights appears upon them. One is a 14-year-oldish girl smoking a cigar, one is a boy, 13 or 14, and the second person is a boy, about 10-ish. He slowed down and parked about 20 feet away, and as soon as his car went into park, all 3 kids in unison started moving towards his car. The youngest said, "It's scary out here. We just wanted a ride home." The eldest said, "You promised us a ride home, remember?" His friend started to unbuckle and reached for the door handle. So the same thing. He was reaching for the door handle and he didn't know why. And he noticed that the kid's eyes were black and predator-like, edge to edge, like the whole orb was black.
So this is them talking on the internet with each other? Is that...
Yep.
Okay.
So Brian had that encounter in 1996, and then he was in a chat room. This is his side of the story. He was in a chat room and ran into somebody with a similar story.
Interesting.
Yeah. So his friend started to reach for the to unbuckle and unlock the door, and John told him no forcefully. All of a sudden, the kids suddenly appeared older, more gaunt. Their faces appeared shadow-filled, and their eyes were as black as night when he didn't think they were before. Again, he slammed his car into reverse and burned rubber, and he reached about 60 feet away in a few seconds. Unlike the first time, this time all 3 kids were in hot pursuit chasing after them.
Oh, Jesus.
And it's the classic horror movie thing that happened. He pulls around, so he's on the 3rd floor of a parking structure, because this is a big conference. He goes all around all the floors, and he thinks the kids have left him behind. When he gets to the bottom, the eldest is waiting for him. Near the side of the exit, and he said that as he drove by as fast as he could see her reaching for the driver handle.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. He went back about 15 minutes later after driving around a bit, and the kids were gone, and the coworker drove home. Now again, this is in the chat room. This isn't proved at all. Like, this is just an internet story, so who knows if it's true or not.
Are you telling me people would just go on the internet and tell lies?
On the internet is true.
Oh wow, you're joking, right? People wouldn't lie on the internet.
Never.
No.
The internet is a lie.
I think so. We're all just fungus.
It's a series of tubes filled with cats, as far as I know.
And Baby Shark songs.
Oh my god.
So a couple days later, he was at the same conference with Doug, and he was driving towards the conference area. And Doug pulled into an intersection going through a red light, and he was struck by an oncoming vehicle and killed instantly. When he drove past the area, so he had to give a police report because he was right behind the guy that got hit, and he saw it all. And he said that as he finished that up and drove away, a couple blocks later, he seen the kid standing on the corner of one of the streets, and he got a feeling of dread. He never saw them again, but they appeared right after that.
Creepy.
This was John Northwood's IRC chat in Camelot.com. Camelot.com is no longer accessible. It's one of the websites of the early internet, but this is a conversation that John Northwood had with the people in the chat. John: "So, do any of you all believe in ghosts, or for that matter, kids with funny eyes? I'm never going in downtown Portland at night. A user named Thoth. John, you know I do, and I believe in kids with funny eyes too. Did you see some? John Northwood. Yes, a week ago, downtown Portland, about 23:30. A user named Lycon. I believe in ghosts, kids, like the ones from Village of the Damned. Thoth. That's disturbing. John Northwood. I was in downtown Portland, Oregon, after a seminar series on software development. I grabbed a bite of dinner to eat at about 10 p.m., and when I left, it was about 11 p.m. I'd grabbed a bite of dinner at about 10 p.m., and when I left it was about 11 p.m. I'd gotten in my car, locked up and belted up, and started the engine when someone tapped my window. Thoth. This sounds incredibly familiar, John. John Northwood. It was in an above-ground garage on the 3rd floor, so I wasn't freaked. It had good lighting and there were still some people around. It was one of the guys from the conference, so I rolled down my window and asked him what was up. He wanted to ride around the block a few times as he was freaked out about who was standing around his car. I figured, so sue me, that it was some of Portland's homeless or some punk kids. So, being a good Samaritan, I let him in and we took off. We drove by his car and there was these 3 kids around it. 2 boys and a girl. The girl was just weird. Just freaky. You know, clothes and hair and makeup, goth-o-matic. The 2 kids were, I don't know, scary as shit. Lycon. Ah, that's how goths are for ya. How old, roughly? John Northwood. She was probably 14 or 15, the oldest boy was probably 14-ish, and the youngest was between 10 and 12. She looked bored, and she was smoking a cigarette. The 2 boys were just leaning against a car. They looked way too intense for kids. Anyway, I started itching behind my eyes, like I really need to look at them, so like an ass I slowed down. Big mistake. The 2 boys sauntered over, and that girl stayed against the car. The eldest was on Doug's side, the guy from the seminar, and the youngest was on mine. I made sure the doors were locked, I love electronic locks, and asked why they were standing around his car. The young one said, "It's scary out there all alone. We just wanted to ride home." The eldest one said, "You promised you'd help us out." And Doug said, "I don't even know you." By this time, I was really on edge. I felt caught between throwing up and jazzing. Adrenaline does that to me. All of a sudden, Doug said he was getting out of the car, and I told him not to. As soon as he started to reach for the handle, the 2 kids, I don't know how to say this right, they looked a lot older. Their faces were somewhat drawn. Their eyes were solid black to black, edge to edge. No pupil, no iris, nothing. Just a liquid black pool. I just about wet myself. Slapped the car into reverse and burned rubber about 60 feet away. They started running after the car. So I spun around one of the supports and we took off. I kid you not, I was convinced if they got a hold of the car, I was going to die, and not in anything approaching a pleasant fashion. Anyway, the oldest one was at the bottom of the garage when we came out, and almost made it to my side door. Lycon. Preservation instinct prevails again. John Northwood. We got down from the 3rd rail doing 30-ish, maybe 35 around the camp. He'd beaten us down the stairs and onto the sidewalk. Anyway, we left him on the corner, and when I turned to look, nothing. He was just gone. Doug just about passed out. All of a sudden, that feeling of malice left. Lycon. I've never heard a sighting of those entities in human bodies, though. I've had my speculation on the fact that it could happen. Hellraiser. Did you ever go back there? John Northwood. We went back about 10 minutes later. Nobody was around his car. He got out of his car and drove home. He said that he had met the young one earlier in the evening, and said that he'd take him home. He had given him a short ride in his car to the seminar and told him to wait. Apparently, though, the older brother scared him, so he said that all bets were off. I was behind him, driving, when that feeling of menace returned. About 45 feet behind him. At that moment, Doug misjudged going across an intersection on a yellow light, and his car was hit by a truck. He was killed instantly. I gave a police report and the whole time felt really freaked out and very exposed. The Jameis. That's one freaky-ass story. John Northwood. I got back into my car, locked the door, and waited. I saw the kids again, about 2 blocks away. I'm not making it up. I think they were vampires, or something like that. But they weren't as pale, and they weren't as skinny, and they felt a damn sight more menacing. I left. Quickly. My only concern now is that this upcoming Wednesday I'm going back to the area for another seminar, and I won't be leaving until 9:30 p.m. I'm freaked out, people, for obvious reasons. Yeah, what are these black-eyed kids? Like, what are their common aspects? So after these 2 stories went live, they kind of like festered on the internet for a few years, and then more and more stories started to appear. In 2012, a movie called Black-Eyed Kids started. A few years later, this guy appeared in an episode of Paranormal America and told a story of the Black-Eyed Kids, and the stories exploded. And we don't know whether those stories are true or misidentifications, or if there's people just intentionally writing stories, or if there's people trying to pass off fake stories as real, or people writing real just fiction about these black-eyed kids using it as a medium. But the amount of sightings exploded. So, common aspects. They have black eyes. So they have a black eyeball deep with no pupil. Sometimes they're described as having totally black orbs. Sometimes they're described as having just hollow, bottomless holes of darkness in their head. So not even an eyeball. They have a twisted voice. So their voice somehow still sounds childlike and still sounds innocent and like their age should, but for some reason it's way more imposing, and it inspires fear and terror and sinister feelings. Their bodies are usually small and scrawny, slight, usually shorter or scrawnier for average people their age. Usually have pale skin and light hair. Their clothes kind of match the era, so in the 90s when it started being spotted, they had like the same things. Some of the newer sightings have these kids with cell phones, with electronics, like following the trends of the time. They are usually in groups of 2, sometimes 3, and usually as a combination of an older spokesman type character and others that follow them. They seem to have a personality that radiates terror. So where do we feel when we have fear in the brain? So the amygdala lights up. The amygdala is an almond-shaped mass in the brain that helps recognize emotion. In fight or flight mode, the brain becomes very hyper-aware. Heart rate and blood pressure rise. The blood flow increases to the muscles, along with the supply of glucose. So we're preparing for something to attack us. We're preparing to be pursued by something dangerous. So your heart is sending enough fuel and blood to the muscles to get away or fight out through to make that fight or flight happen. Your organs, not essential to survival, so your guts and digestive system all shut down or slow down. That's the kind of terror these things inspire. Usually there's an older one that's bold, shameless, pushy, and confident, and there's a younger one that's shy, reserved, and quiet. They use polite language, like yes sir, no sir. They seem to have psychic power sometimes. There's some stories that say that they produce headaches and nosebleeds. Some seem to simply glance or stare at each other to communicate. They seem to influence people to open doors and unlock locks subconsciously. And they seem to know people's names before they are told. So there's some sightings where before these kids even show up and meet people, they already know the names of the people they're encountering. Also, there's some stories...
Fucking creepy, man.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing, like...
Sounds like an X-File.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course there's alien shit, like, when they walk into an area with lights, sometimes they flicker, sometimes electronics go dead and stuff like that. Have you guys ever encountered any kids in the middle of the night?
Just my own.
No, not recently.
We don't talk about that here.
Not happen.
No? Not demon children, just normal, ragamuffins.
Do you hear the slow music going ting 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 in the background, and you hear like children's laughter, but you don't see them. You know how it is.
I guess. Well, what I want to know is they're supposed to be between the ages of 6 and 16, give or take, right?
Yep.
Well, what happens after they're 16? What happens to them then? Where do they go? How come we never see any over the age of 16 or under?
They go into the finance and accounting departments.
Yeah, where's my sweaty fat guy standing at my door saying, "Let me in your car"?
Yeah. No kidding.
It's me.
And what would the motivation be? Why are these things here? Where are they from? I just looked something up that said could be a manifestation of an old Iroquois legend, but
or maybe they're like hybrids between the Greys and humans. You know?
What's their purpose?
Because the Greys all have like the dark orbs too in their heads, so maybe that's like a dominant trait, and we actually are like genetically comparable to have children. Maybe that's why they're always only children, is because they have a short lifespan, either genetically speaking, or there's some sort of medical defect that they can't live beyond 16.
So where do the new ones come from?
Well,
fucking
they keep doing the alien human hybrid thing, Ice-D. That's what you got to do.
What's the end game here?
I mean, what's the end game for any shadowy old world conspiracy here?
Exactly.
With everybody's cell phones, why haven't we seen videos of them?
Yeah. There's a few pictures out there of purported black-eyed kids, but it seems like just like super Photoshop photos of kids in darkness. Like a photographer just like to a 6-year-old, like, hey, get out in the driveway for a second.
Yep.
Snap, okay, I'm going to be in the basement for a few hours. He's like, hey, I spotted a black-eyed kid.
I'm going to do that tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to believe, but I always have these questions. What's the motivation? Why are they here? Why are they not shown to everybody? Why is everything kept a secret?
Yeah.
And the government, etc., etc. Well, sure. However, I haven't had encounters with UFOs, so I am not dismissing it. I just need more.
I would like to point out something that's a little tangential, but I do like that most people think of how incompetent the government is, but also that they have all of these conspiracies.
Yes.
Yeah, it's my favorite thing to think about.
They want you to think they're incompetent.
Yes.
It's all part of the plan. That's why they fuck up with all the standard bureaucratic shit. But like the big conspiracy wing of the government is
top notch.
Top notch. They don't fuck around. That's why they tell these other bureaucratic sections to fuck up on the forms and whatever else, is just because they don't want people to think that there is this grandiose scheme. It's like smoke and mirrors, man. Smoke and mirrors.
Exactly, man.
If the government's trying to convince me that they're incompetent, fuck, they're the method actors of God.
Like the only thing
they are convincing as fuck.
Exactly. So
they should go for the Oscars because they'd sweep with their acting skills.
Jesus.
So there's some theories on what these things are, and somebody on the Discord chat pointed out that these are a lot of aspects that kids just do. Like, especially after the legend became known, like, there's a high possibility of, like, bored kids fucking with people after hearing this. Like, buying some contacts, going out after dark, scaring people, etc.
Maybe they wear their sunglasses at night.
Like Corey Hart?
Like Corey Hart.
Yeah. Oh, they're spawn of Corey Hart. We knew it all along.
I wear my sunglasses at night.
So I can.
Second part of the LP.
Meanwhile,
so
at the ranch.
So there's some theories to what these things could be. So just like Ice-D mentioned, they could be something called the Occultae of Iroquois legends. So in Iroquois society, good energy was known as Orend, and negative energy was known as Occultae. And it could possess animals, families, buildings, tools. It was kind of like a possessive force that could infect any area or any time or any space. And when it entered naughty little children, this made their eyes completely black. Now, in Iroquois legends, these children now infected by the Occultae were feral, cannibalistic, ferocious, mean, and insatiable. So they would act like beasts. They would try and consume other people and chew them and try and eat. And they were described as like badgers, like bears. Like they would try and pursue prey, and their prey was human.
Jesus.
Yeah. But it's not really matching the black-eyed kids that just tap on a door and need to be invited in. Like, it doesn't really match that. So I don't think that's quite what they could be, but who knows? Next up, a theory is vampires. Let's assume they exist for the purpose of this discussion. So they have a tendency to need to be invited in. There's some old vampire lore where you need to invite a vampire in. Some German legends of vampire have pure black eyes. If anybody has seen the movie 30 Days of Night, those are very much like German-inspired vampires, like mouths like piranha and eyes like black orbs. But the children sometimes appear during the day. They appear often at night, but not all the time. They don't usually talk about blood, and apparently only vampire children knock on cars at night. Maybe they're... I don't know, maybe the older vampires already have an accessible source of blood, and the vampire children have to fend for scraps and knock on people's windows to get a little feed. Who knows?
It's sort of like killer clowns. That was last year's big fad, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Where'd they go?
They all turned into juggalos.
Yeah.
I think so.
Whoop, whoop. Yeah, man, much motherfucking clown love.
Yeah. Other thing they could be is angels or demons. So, angels, demons, fey creatures throughout history have a lot of these aspects, a lot of these psychic aspects, like knowing people's names without them telling, or disappearing and reappearing, having black eyes or glowing eyes or no eyes with black pits. These are all just kind of half matches to these things. So they could be those things, who knows, if they exist. Angels and demons also give that otherworldly presence, that awe or danger or terror just by having you in their presence. Maybe they're aliens. They're kind of awkward. Those of you who have listened... Oh, yes. Those who have listened to our Mothman episode, you know about Ingrid Glass, that man who came down to talk to the gentleman in the car, and he parked his spaceship right in front of his car and seemed to have the strangest conversation. He didn't understand what maps were, or distances were, or what a job was, all kinds of stuff. And some of the conversations that these black-eyed kids have are similar to that, where they misunderstand basic things about society. They have primes with times, with reading, with basic logic, such as movie time, stuff like that. Aliens also have an otherworldly presence. They push human customs past the limit, so they, most humans would know that after one no, you should stop. The guy said no, so you don't keep on going. But these kids would keep on asking, smash on the window, thinking if I act like a maniac and smash on this person's window, begging to be let into their car, that'll convince them. They don't seem to understand how to negotiate.
Okay, but also they're kids, and I have a 5-year-old, and you've got to tell him no a lot more than once sometimes to get him to go away.
Go away.
Get out.
What I think is the most likely explanation is they're an internet phenomenon. One story sparked it, and the rest followed. They could be false stories, played with the intention of being real, so people posting encounters that they think are real. There could be fan fiction stories where they're actually writing it as a fiction purposely and not lying to people. And there could be just simple false identification. After hearing this legend, you start to see things. Just like people started to see aliens after the sci-fi movies of the 1950s. After the church started to crack down on demons and warn about demons everywhere, people started to see them in their dreams, and wake up to them and hallucinate them. Kind of a cultural psychosis on a regular thing. So, if you were a person or people that read these creepypastas about black-eyed kids in the early 2000s, it would put a little seed in your mind. You might be subconsciously on the lookout for something that appeared like a black-eyed kid. Mm-hmm. And you might misidentify it and post the story to the internet. Also, you can't discount that people could buy these contacts and put them in their eyes and prank people now that the legend is out there. And there's enough prank YouTube channels that has had to happen multiple times already. And people like to pull pranks and fuck with people anyways. Yeah. So I think that's what it is. I think it's an internet phenomenon. I don't think there are aliens or otherworldly beings, but who knows? Black-eyed kids, if you're out there, I don't know, I'm sometimes doing deliveries late at night. So feel free to knock on my car and say hello. I'd love to interview you. I'll have my phone on me so we can record or whatever.
But would you give them a ride?
Yeah.
Fuck no.
What if they wanted to go somewhere and they really need it in your car, but they can't get in unless you let them in?
You just have to let them in.
You just gotta let them in.
Just let me in.
Let them in, dude.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they have to.
But they have
to sit in the trunk.
It's halfway in.
Yeah. You can get in. You have to stay in the trunk. Okay, the people on the Discord say let them in. Okay, you know, if they show up, I'm going to let them in. Ood was never heard from again. All right, so for Occultae Veritatis, I'm Ood Gallifrey.
Sage Murray.
Richard Bigley.
And in studio with us,
Ice-D.
Arthur Tallis.
Yes, would you like to pitch your podcast one more time, Ice-D?
Ice-D. Hey, that's me. What you get is what you see. Hey, kids, don't vape. Don't want to look like a grape or a crepe. Suzette. You bet. All wet. Don't forget. Ice-D. Yo, reminding you. When you have nothing better to do except listen to these guys, and you said to yourself, enough is enough. I want some intelligent conversation from
fuck you.
some people who actually know what the poop is going on out there. Just write this one down. www.talkingbooks.tk. Got that? Hey, you have a pen and paper? Pen and pencil? Happy? Operators are standing by. Oh, hi, there's one there. Take it away. Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening. Make sure to not punch people. Let them punch you first. That way you're covered legally. Do not take legal advice from a podcast.
Love you, bye.
Alrighty, today we have a wonderful little tune all the way from 1916 to play us out from the Black Eyed Kids episode. This is the original I Ain't Got Nobody by Marion Harris. See you all in the after show.
It's awfully hard to love someone
Alrighty, let's hear some prayers to Valhalla from our cult members on the Cult of Santa Valhalla Discord channel. Just join for as little as $1 a month on Patreon, and you too can send prayers to be read on air to Valhalla. From Susie Q. Oh dear and greatest goddess Valhalla, may we find the exact right dose of my newish mood stabilizer swiftly, and may I be granted patience with the feelings I have caught. Amen. Yes, help Susie Q find what meds work for her, what store-bought chemicals can make her life a little easier. From Miriam, they pray, Dear Valhalla, can we get a concentrated meteor on either the White House or Mar-a-Lago? Because Jesus fuck. And the Jesus fuck is referring to, of course, Donald Trump, who in late has become even more corrupt. It seems like there's no basement with these guys. Yeah, him and all his cronies. I hope this wish comes true, but you know, since we live in a multiverse with many other deities, it's often hard to coordinate meteor strikes. But Valhalla, in all your wisdom, I wish you strength on this prayer, and I hope you grant it for Miriam. This is not a prayer to Val, but instead a praising of her glory and blessings. From Lay. Since my job interview was through a program, I got feedback. It came strong in all areas. Looks that I'll be getting a good job come January. Thank you, Val. Yes, Val, thank you for blessing Lay in your infinite wisdom and helping them achieve better employment. Because in this capitalist wasteland, we need every penny we can get. And with that praise, Lay comes with a prayer in the form of a poem. Val above, please grant my prayer. Get me the hell out of here. They mean well, they know I do, but also nag and bitch till face is blue. Give me strength, O Val above, for this family of mine still must I love. Yes, I hope that you find solace and support in dealing with your family. Yeah, family is always a double-edged sword because you're tempted and pressured to keep them close, but sometimes just by what kind of people they are, they can be toxic. Lay, I hope Val gives you strength. From Z-Cat Person. Z-Cat Person, another one of our lovely cult members. Great Valhalla. I have to finish my master's thesis by the 28th. Please give me the strength to finish it in time. And send my professors many sexy wet dreams that they are happy and give me a good grade. Also, I read a study that judges give more lenient sentences after lunch, after they've eaten, so I hope that not only do they have sexy dreams, that they're well fed before they go over your thesis. Every time. Every step of the way. So, the cat person, I hope Val grants your prayer. Now, this episode is releasing on the 20th of October 2019, which is the day before the Canadian election. So the people on the Patreon are going to be able to hear this prayer before it happens, and I hope that Val, in her infinite glory, in her power, I hope she has time to influence the Canadian election. Bambi prays. Bambi, Val, please with your godliness allow the Canadian federal election on Monday to reflect the needs of the Canadians and guide into office members of Parliament who would genuinely help and value Canadians. Yes, thank you, Bambi. We need it. Yeah, election is on the 21st. It's gonna be a rough one. I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know. Yeah. So Val, please help that along. That's it for our prayers to Val this week. Thank you for tuning into the after show. You are all lovely people. Make sure that you have a balance in your life between honesty and solace. Some people are tempted to hold truths that they should utter because they want to be overly nice, but sometimes truths need to be said that hurt, because sometimes problems have to be dealt with. So make sure to both protect yourself, but speak your truth when you need to. Have a lovely evening. Goodbye.